Alright, your head and your spine line. Oh, I've kind of messed that line up. I hope you can read it. Two things you read on this head and spine line. How smart you are by how straight across your hand that line goes. Yours is very intelligent, by the way. And then if you got any problems in that spine at all, it's going to show in that line. And I'll tell you why. I'm not just a palm reader. I've got a master's degree in health education. And when I was I was in my 40s when I was finishing my degree in health ed. And I started reading the palmistry books, and everything had health stuff in it. In fact, if you read your palmistry books, there's just a contingent of health in there. And so I found this old book that was written by a medical doctor, Dr. Eugene somebody or other, and it's not in print anymore. And he tells how you can see the spine in the hand. Well, the spine runs our whole body. Find that chart that says understanding your cervical spine, and look down at the bottom of that and see what a vertebrae looks like. If you're looking down the top of it, two nerves come off of each side of each one of those vertebrae. And the vertebrae is the bony process that is in your spine. It covers up your spinal cord. And the nerves come out of the spinal cord, and they run to different areas of the body, and that's what runs your body. So find your chart now that says Chart of Effects of Spinal Misalignments. And on that left side, you'll see the picture of each one of those vertebrae. And if those vertebrae get twisted out of place or turned out of place, it'll pinch that nerve. The nerve goes out into the body, intermeshes with the muscles, and if you're getting a pinched nerve in there, it's sending a little signal. It goes zzz, 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 and it makes a muscle spasm, and it holds that vertebrae out of place. Well, then those nerves go down, and they end up in your hands and your feet. And you can actually, that's how you read it on your hands. You can actually do some therapy on your hands, massage therapy, and kind of relieve some of those nerves. But where I've got that circled in red, that's where those vertebrae are turned out of place. Now see, the next column is the name of the vertebrae, your cervical, thoracic, lumbar. So underneath your Jupiter finger, it's going to show your cervical vertebrae 1 through 7. Underneath the Saturn finger, it'll show your thoracic vertebrae 1 through 12. Underneath that Sun finger, it'll show your lumbar vertebrae 1 through 5. And underneath that pinky finger, that the Mercury finger, the Mercury finger, it's going to show your tailbone. Sacrum and coccyx. Boy, you don't want that turned out of place. That is miserable when that gets out of place. And then the next area, on the next column it says areas. That's the area of your body that those nerves go to that come off of each one of those vertebrae. And the head, the pituitary, the eyes, the nose, the thyroid, the heart, the lungs, the stomach, etc., etc. And then the next column is the effects. This is the effects that you get when those vertebrae are kind of pushed out of place a little bit. Easy for them to get pushed out of place. If you've had a car accident or a bike accident, I'll tell you more about that in a minute here. This column is the effects that you get. Depression, strokes, ADD, ADHD, anxiety attacks, heart conditions, stomach troubles, etc. So all you do is just run your finger right across there, and you can see which vertebrae is out of place and what area it goes to, and then the effects when that gets turned out of place. Okay. Those vertebrae can get turned out of place quite easily. Like I say, car wrecks, accidents, horseback riding. I'll tell you a horseback story here in a minute. and falling off of a bicycle, wrecking getting whiplashes. That's really hard on you. Gymnastics, contact sports, just leaning over your computer causes some problems in that base of that neck. I call it the interneck. I've noticed that people can have really good spines, but they're out of place right there in the neck because they lean over those darn computers hour after hour. And I've got a little therapy for that. I can get that straightened out. Anyway, it's easy for the spine to get out of place. And that's where yours are out of place, is where I've got the red circles. And that's what it shows in your hand, is these little island things. If you're out of place at the top of the spine, it's going to throw you out in the lower spine to compensate. It'll turn out of place the opposite way. Alright, let's address some of these vertebrae that's out of place. That top one, you're out of place in that neck area, and right at the base of the neck, you got the inner neck. That's when you're leaning over that darn computer all the time. Let's see, what is it you said you do, city employee? You must sit at a desk over your computer for a while. So I tell my office workers to do this little therapy for the neck. And my medical doctor showed me this. This will pop those vertebrae back in place right at the base of your neck, where you get the interneck. Sit up in a chair straight, or stand up. Stand up's better. Put your arms right straight out in front of you. Now lock your fingers together and turn your palms over backwards. Now raise your arms above your head. That means your palms are facing the ceiling and your elbows are straight. Now push your arms back. Back behind your head. And you'll hear that go pop, pop, pop. Pops that vertebrae back in place. Well, those vertebrae, it's about the 5C, 6C, 7C, 1T, 2T, 3T. That's especially those nerves that go to the heart and the lungs. It'll pop them back in place. And don't worry about the pops. The doctor says that that's just the gases releasing when they move back in place. So if you're sitting at a desk quite a bit, do that little therapy. A lot of my office workers do that once at lunch and once after work, and they say their spines feel a lot better. A lot better. You're probably going to have to go see a chiropractor and get straightened out. Let's see. And then see right there in your heart nerves, that 2T? That's what's causing that stress on that heart line. And then you got a little place right in that lower back that's out, but then you're out right there and clear down in your lower back in that 3L, 3 lumbar. That's where your female organs are. That's what's making that girdle of Venus line in there, because that's turned out of place. Like I say, when you're turned out of place at the top, it's going to turn you out the opposite way in your lower spine. So get that straightened up and go get a chiropractor. Chiropractors are cheap. They only charge $45, $50 to straighten up your spine. Well worth it. Now, if you want to keep that spine straight, let me tell you how to do that. I was set up at one time, we were doing a fundraiser for our high school, and so I'd set up in the gym, and I had a bunch of ladies come into the gym, and two of them walked over the table and had their hands read. Well, they had perfect spines. I couldn't believe it. And I told them, I said, I don't very often see a perfect spine. And they motioned their girlfriends to come over. And so I read all of their hands. There's 7 of them all together. And I read every hand, and every single one of those women had perfect spines. I couldn't believe it. And I looked up at them and said, are you girls trying to trick me or something? And they were joking and laughing off to the side. And finally one of the little gals walked over and she says, Kat, I better tell you. She said, we're the walking club. We walk 7 miles every day. She says, when we walk at a good fast pace. Well, that makes sense, because those 2 big old leg muscles are hooked to those 2 muscles that go along each side of the spine. And when you walk, especially at a good fast pace, that moves those back muscles up and down, and it strengthens them. And it holds that spine in place good. So that's why they had such excellent spines, is from the walking. Oh, I'm not saying you got to go walk 7 miles a day. Probably a time or two around the block will do it. But walk at a good fast pace and keep that spine in shape. That's important, that you keep the spine healthy.